This is the ZMAR Podcast. Elite Benefits of America helps small and mid-sized companies with their health insurance programs. And now, your host, Butch ZMAR.
So is it revenue for the sake of revenue, or is it just lack of service due to laziness or incompetency? We all need a purpose, otherwise we lose our drive, right? And so drive is everything, but it's different for everybody. Some could take a major project and take a whole year to do it, and others could accomplish the same task or project and do it in one day or even 1 hour. Everybody's just a little bit different. One thing, just for example, the average person reads less than 13 books a year. That's just a little over one per month. In 2024, even myself personally, I'm on pace to either read or listen to about 80 books. And some people would say that's a lot. But it really depends, because I know people that are actually on pace to read about 150 books in 2024. And so it's all relative. Some people run one marathon for their lifetime. It's like an ultimate goal. I met tons of them. They thought it was like this lifetime achievement to run 26.1 miles. But I also know runners, including myself, that have run 26 miles for a training run, and they had to do it by the time that the workday started. I'm sure most of us showed up late to work that day, but still, we put the time in, and it's a training run, and we still went to work that day versus a 26-mile race that you're competing with others, only to try to go home and get an ice bath and sleep in the next day. And if you think that's over the top, I know folks that are runners that run 24 hours just for a training run. And I don't know him personally, but a good example is this guy named Dean. I don't know his last name offhand, but he's in California, but he's a big-time contributor to the running world, written many books. But for a training run, they called him the overnight runner. So he would put his daughter to bed after dinner, and then he would set out, hit the road, and then come back the next day. And he would, I don't even know how many miles he ran. I think it's over 50, but it might even be closer to 100. But anyhow, he would run 24 hours, and some people think that's crazy, right? But it's all relative. And then in business, even if we compare like the average solopreneur out there, which is a bulk of small businesses in the United States, they only make up to $50,000 on average. And that's it, right? So then we talk about small employers with employees, depending on size, will determine revenue, but despite the 82% failure rate in the first, I think it's 5 years, the revenue ranges from 1 million to 5 million annually. But what really causes this difference in revenue? In a snapshot, there's a lot of little things that are different. It's not always a whole bunch. I know Brian Tracy used a phrase where a horse race, and they go around a horse race, and then the second place only lost by a nose, but the prize winning was so much different. But the difference between the two horse races could have been just a handful of steps that caused that loss by a nose. Patience is definitely key. So even in the benefits world, we've sitting across the conference table from board of directors, partners, executives, HR people, and they don't want to be patient enough to let things take its course. And so sometimes you just have to let it take its course, because things take time. The bigger the ship, the harder it is to move that turn. The other thing is consistency, right? So we have employers that even on a benefits program, they go up and down. Something's hot, something's not. It just keeps changing, right? And so it disrupts the workplace. Same thing with revenue and sales and marketing. We have clients, even though we're not in the consulting business of marketing and sales, they'll all of a sudden be hot on something until it doesn't work, and then it all of a sudden moves, right? And just this morning, I was looking through videos, partly for content, but there was a marketing guy, and he had a 10-second video clip, and so he was saying that he was consulting with a guy that working in a gym. He was trying to figure out how to increase his opportunities for people to come in and join his gym membership. And so he had heard that flyers really work in the gym industry. So he said, all right, I'll go put out flyers and see what happens. So he worked all day, puts these flyers out, and he comes back and says, man, I only got one lead from all 300. It was weeks later to reap the results. It was only one lead, one opportunity. He said, flyers don't work, so we have to find something else. And that consultant said that, oh, it's interesting. You only put out 300 and you worked hard and put it and you only got one lead. And the consultant said, we really don't start tracking results until you have 5,000 flyers out there. So you didn't do it enough. So people become impatient and they're not consistent with it. Just a couple facts from World War II. The idea of this came from, there was a movie out there about Vietnam, actually, and there was a court case related to a group of soldiers firing on an open crowd, and they're claiming that they were unarmed, even though they gave the testimony that they were being shot at. And so they were just talking about life expectancy in Vietnam. And so I thought it was interesting, and I've read these before, so I thought I would share some of it. But in World War II, the life expectancy, going into combat for a gunner was about 2.8 seconds, compared to a combat medic of 6 seconds before they're gone. And so compared to a pilot, 30 days, right? But my point here is the numbers change based on certain criterias, right? And so they were all soldiers, right? So what made the difference, right? And business people are people in business, right? Runners are still runners, right? They're still put into category, and it depends on what we're measuring for criteria. It's definitely unfair to compare purpose with the World War II vets because they all had a purpose in some degree. It could be driven by themselves or driven by others. So, and for example, the draft, right? And it could be some other things. I know years ago, court cases, for young teenagers that caused trouble, the judge would give them an ultimatum that either they go to jail or they join the military. They don't do that anymore, but I still think we need to go back to that. But sometimes you're forced to make decisions in that case that are driven outside. But in business, we get outside drivers too, and we'll kind of go over that a little bit. So, but in business, why are some people just stuck at $50,000 a year in income versus others? So even in my business, other benefit consultants, I'm not comparing property and casualty agencies. They're a different animal altogether. But there's a big difference with the purpose and the driven based on revenue. And so there's a lot of incompetency that comes with it. And I'll have a couple case studies that talk about that. But small shops never get out of the 200 to 300,000 range annually. And they just get stuck. A lot of them are even lower than that. I just think that the average across the country, these solopreneurs get higher, but to about 200,000-300,000. There's a couple of reasons for this. So one is we're thankful to be in the business of residual income. That's what a lot of people out there try to do. They need consistent revenue. So even though we only take a very, 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 very small piece, where it's actually insulting how much we get paid on a small piece of the premiums. In some cases, on larger companies, it's a percentage of the premium, but even some of the more innovative brokers are out there just driving that away from that and just more of products and services, scope of work kind of thing is what they're charging for. But we get a small piece of that, and then over time, it just keeps building because every month somebody pays. So if a newer salesperson comes in the mix, like they have to really work hard to get that book up, and then at a certain point then you could start leveraging time. Otherwise your time is equity, and so you have to go out there and earn it. So there's sweat equity. The problem is with a lot of people coming in the industry, they demand too much. They're not willing to cut their teeth and get there, but nonetheless these businesses will build of enough residual income where eventually they might actually hire somebody. And a lot of times it could be their spouse. And this goes for property and casualty agencies too. Their spouse is the part-time employee, even though she or he may not be getting paid, or they are. Maybe it's a kid, right? They finally get old enough and like, hey, I need a body here, do this work, right? It could be a part-time worker, and a lot of times that's where it stops. But you could also see these smaller agencies have full-time work, and usually it's one, maybe two people to help manage that book of business. And then there's some leverage, and some of those that build that leverage over a period of time, and they might creep up to 300 to 500,000, depending on the drive, the purpose, the leverage they're providing. And it could also be the solutions that are provided, right? So if you're a status quo insurance agent, there is law of diminishing returns at some point. A lot of employers are out there are looking for answers and different ways of cutting the pie, so to speak, of trying to figure out how to reinvent yourself with employee benefits programs. So employers are looking for brokers that are open-minded, innovative, nimble, and ready to move. And then bigger agents will have higher revenue per salesperson or agent. And there's several reasons behind this. With the bigger agents or agencies, they have more revenue for support, bodies and seats, personnel, software, resources, marketing, leverage for the salespeople. It does create incompetencies in the salesperson. They get lazy and complacent, maybe a good word, where they just get comfortable in a certain spot, and then sometimes they get leverage or drive from the internal saying you got to produce, and then finally they'll go sell more. But all this provides support, and this does not mean that smaller shops don't have enough to support your business. I know there was a long time where my revenue was very low, and but we still had resources to solve problems. We still had access to things that even some bigger shops didn't have access to. Even if I was just winging it, it still was an opportunity for employers to save money, have better benefit packages, and we were trying to just piece the square peg in a round hole. In fact, a lot of these smaller shops, they're more driven. They're trying to be more resourceful because they're trying to earn your respect. They're trying to earn credibility, and they're trying to earn your business because they need it, right? They're smaller. Bigger shops maybe not be as desperate to get business. So a lot of smaller shops have more to offer. They're more nimble to make a move. When there's new trends coming, the smaller shops are the ones pushing that envelope to help employers more so than the bigger shops. Especially bigger shops are incentivized in a different way to keep everything the same. You get more TLC, and I would say hands down, that's a lot of smaller companies, even if they're under 100 employees, they want this hand walking thing or hand holding, right? And they want that TLC. They want, they care more. The smaller shops care more about the business, but the big shops care. It's just a little bit different. And doesn't mean that one's better than the other. I'm just trying to paint the picture that just because I spelled out that bigger shops may have more software, more support, more resources, more marketing, more leverage. The small shops can't figure it out for you. In fact, a lot of times they do better jobs. But again, it's all about leverage, right? And so it's like using a drill gun or a screw gun instead of a screwdriver. You'll get it done faster, and it may even be better. I know sometimes I was probably better off using a screwdriver, but it's about the toolbox, right? And it's having the tools. There's a guy I know personally. I've been trying to get him on the podcast. He's actually here in Illinois, competitor, if you will, but we're not really competitors. The business is big enough. He's a small shop. Sure, he's got partners, relationships, contracts all over the country to build cases. He's a large group kind of guy. When I say large group, 1,000 employees may be small to him. And so whereas the average agency shop out there is not 1,000 plus. They want it, doesn't mean they can support it. Even the big shops have trouble doing it 1,000. And this guy's figured it out, and he doesn't have a big support staff. And so it's not the size, it's about the tools in the toolbox to get the job done. Outside drivers could also change those outcomes, right? And we're trying to find better outcomes for employee benefit programs, business, better outcomes in profit, more productivity in the workplace. That's why you go out and get consultants, right? The problem that we're perceived as being part of an insurance company, and that's a traditional outlook. They're not paying for us directly in most cases. Those who are listening to this, when's the last time you wrote a check to a benefits broker. And you might have, but I'm just saying that in most cases, you're not writing checks on a monthly basis as a retainer or an annual check to retain their services. It's usually built in. So we're just in a different light. But sometimes there's limiting factors of the agency to implement a employer benefits plan. Even on large shops, though, they don't have all the resources to improve outcomes. And some shops out there, the bigger ones, they could care less for anything under 1,000 employees or even under 100 employees. Most of the businesses out there are under 100 employees. And now the bigger companies employ more people, but they're bigger. But there's just a lot more accounts, if you will, that you can assist as our industry assisting these businesses. But other times, employers prevent those better outcomes. They get complacent. They're not consistent. They're not looking for new ideas. They're too loyal to old ways. They procrastinate and miss windows that they could have had opportunities. The good news is those windows could be reset, depending on what it is. But sometimes they feel like they are a lost cause. They throw up their hands and they're firing people like their broker because they claim that the broker didn't perform, but they just gave a small window. We just had a case where, they were pushing us and we're getting it done. We're up against the wire, but we fully disclosed that we're late in the game. But we had to do underwriting and everything, and usually we need a good month to make sure underwriting has enough time, and we put the documents together, all this stuff. Well, from start to finish, we did it in 3 weeks, and that includes the open enrollment. I'm not saying that no one else has ever done that. I'm just saying that it's super, super hard to do, and it'll be our fault if we don't finish it up. But it should be finished this morning. But it doesn't help the whole situation. But because somebody else decided to procrastinate, whether it was us or the other broker or the incumbent that's already there, it doesn't stack the cards in the employer's favor other than stress. Yeah, the brand loyalty is usually the biggest one, especially with growing companies. When they start out smaller, they just get used to it. They're comfortable. And in fact, some of them, when they sell their company, they still want to keep with the loyalty brand. And loyalty is only one way in this case. But people feel confident with it. So sometimes there's no way around it. But money talks, right? So that's what happened with many employers. And we had some this summer that they didn't care about brand loyalty. And so some of them went out there and they saved multiple six figures on their health insurance premium and actually gave better benefits to their employees. And so they were like, I'm done with this premium stuff. It's driving me crazy, and it keeps going up. But not everybody's willing to do that. And sometimes the employer is actually more loyal to the benefits firm, even though they're not equipped or knowledgeable. Maybe they're aging and they've just been longtime friends over the years to handle all these better outcomes. And even the week of this recording, we had a company that we started talking to. It was introduced to us by a payroll partner. The current agent was a more senior broker, and I don't know their age. I just know that they've been around a very, very, very long time, much longer than I ever have in the industry. They became friends over the years. They had 8 separate entities for this company. They had over 100 employees. Many compliance issues that were not even addressed because I'm not speaking for the broker, but there could have been a conception of, or this idea of, that if you kept it all separate, you don't have to comply with the large groups. But unfortunately, the IRS considers it a controlled group. There's only one owner. It's easier to keep things separate than worrying about multi-state packages and keeping things compliant. It's just harder, right? So we end up putting it all together, and we saved the company nearly $200,000 a year. We streamlined the benefits packages. The waiting periods were all different before. Now they're all the same, making it far easier for HR to handle the situation. We implemented a benefit administration system to get them away from PDF. So the HR person was dealing with benefit packages in a PDF format and then collecting applications from the employees. and then the broker was actually forcing them to just put it in the portal. And in some cases, I understand that the employer needs to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. It's their responsibility, their employees. It's not our responsibility. We're there to aid and assist for this process. Not that there's a problem with the employer putting it in or the broker putting it in. Of course, it's scope of work again, right? So what's the expectations of the work? But in this case, it's fine that they did that. But like, if we could save them time with paperwork and hassle and collecting paperwork and then in this case, there was like 5 different health insurance carriers at play. So you have to know which applications to send. And it was just a nightmare. Well, we're saving all that time. They're more than happy to go in the portal and put their employees in there or terminate them because all the freed up time they do, we just create it for them. So that peace of mind of doing HR compliance, and then obviously the bottom line, right? So they saved money. They saved money on efficiency and payroll. They could focus on other projects that instead of being tied up in wasted time activities inside the benefits program. Another case study just to share, this one was 1,000 employees, having more resources than the incumbent. We saved them just under $400,000 annually. Most of that was in the prescription drug pharmacy benefit manager, which will have more lawsuits coming up. Pharmacy benefit manager field is going to change, or it has been. And so there's a lot more responsibility pushed on the pharmacy benefit managers. And so I think there's going to be more lawsuits that come into play, but that'll be a topic for another day. On that case, the broker was getting paid about $250,000 a year to hold that account, and they were being lazy. They weren't being innovative. It was just typical renewal stuff, right? The increase comes in, they go back, they negotiate a few points off, and they're the hero because they got the premiums down. Like, it's the same song and dance over and over again, and they try to incentivize them to stay with the company, not disclosing the fact that there's back-end bonuses related to it. By keeping them there, it's called retention bonuses. Only usually large shops get access to that. Even medium-sized shops have a hard time. The threshold for that retention business is very high, and so only large shops get to it. So if you're working with a national player or just a big agency, even if it's in the state that you're in, there's a high chance that they're getting the consistency bonus. And so we're not getting paid that much on the account, as much as $250,000. So part of that savings is definitely a reduce in commissions, not by much, but we're paid what's fair, not only for the resources that we provided, the savings on top of just providing a better resource, better outcome. It's still worth our time. So one more, there was a 100 employee group. Again, they were with a big agency, and they were sitting with their hands down and avoiding situations, just the status quo, right? With this one, we saved them $100,000, and then on top of that, we're actually getting paid more than the existing or the incumbent broker. And we also built in incentives for us. So if we perform, we get paid more. And so the board of directors signed off on it. They are fully aware of compensation disclosures on how that works. They were happy to start reversing the trend on healthcare and bringing them, again, 6-figure savings. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. There's definitely discrepancies. Again, watch out for just, brokers getting revenue for the sake of revenue. And then obviously following up with lack of support or initiative or drive to make things happen.